Hi, everyone. This is Diana Bauer. Welcome to day 2 of the Future of Water Infrastructure and Innovation Summit. The plenary sessions for the summit are being recorded, including this one. If you do not wish to be recorded, please do not turn on your microphone. Yesterday, we brainstormed on what the future of water infrastructure out to 2050 might look like, how it might be different from today's, and talked about some technical barriers and opportunities along the way. We work from the perspective of individual technology areas ranging from desalination to water and wastewater, produced water, hydropower and conveyance, and then industrial water management. Today, we'll continue envisioning future water infrastructure, this time in a way that cuts across technology areas. So the aspects of the water infrastructure that you captured yesterday that are kind of going to go into your brainstorming today fall into categories such as adaptive systems, an integrated approach, advanced data and information for decision making, getting the cost and value of water right, and technology advance for flexibility and sustainability, particularly in distributed systems. Today, we'll consider cross-cutting topics that can create the environment to enable future water infrastructure, including regional water management, business models, workforce development, among other areas. But first, we'll have another visionary plenary speaker to help us think big. And it is my pleasure to introduce Michelle Wyman, who is Executive Director of the National Council for Science and the Environment, and who, back in the day, she worked at DOE. So it's a great honor for us to have her back today to speak. E.M. Gayak will be moderating questions at the end of Michelle's presentation. Please enter your questions in chat in your Zoom window. Thank you. Michelle?
Thanks so much, Diana. I am first going to ask really quickly just to double check, make sure sound is good. Hopefully all of you can. Great. Thank you, Peter. You can see me, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Okay, Peter, great. Thank you so much. Well, good afternoon. Warmest thanks to Diana and the Department of Energy. And for those of you who I had the pleasure of working with years back, I appreciate having this opportunity today. I'm so pleased to be with all of you. Given this moment in time and the reality of Zoom fatigue, let's get straight to it. What does the future of water infrastructure look like? What is the vision for what's possible? In 2016, an estimated 4 million Americans did not have regular access to safe drinking water. A recent study out of Michigan State University found that due to the increase in extreme weather events, including acute events like hurricanes and wildfires, and extended events like heat and drought, along with aging infrastructure and other factors, as many as 41 million American households may not be able to afford water and wastewater services in 2022. The pandemic of 2020 has accelerated the risk to already stressed systems and exposed vulnerable communities to COVID-19 at remarkably disproportionate rates. That said, the United States is a resilient and creative nation. Communities that lack water access have shown extraordinary tenacity in the face of challenge, including COVID-19 and before that. In Appalachia, food banks are using atmospheric water generation technology to bring drinking water to those who need it. In rural parts of the South, communities are exploring alternative wastewater treatment strategies. And in California, local organizations are successfully advocating for transformative policy and funding to increase their ability to support underserved neighborhoods. Some of these approaches are interim measures to protect public health during the crisis. Others are intended to bring fundamental systemic changes to deliver long-term sustainable solutions. These communities demonstrate that with dedicated resources, ingenuity, cross-sector partnerships, increased public awareness, political will, and applied science, impacts from water access and quality gaps can be effectively addressed and ultimately closed for good. That's the goal. As the following map shows, in 2014, water stress in certain regions of the US was already chronic and severe. Now, almost a decade later, the situation has only worsened. In this index, you can see watersheds are considered stressed when water demand from power plants, agriculture, and municipalities exceeds 40% of available supply. And this particular index comes out of the National Climate Assessment, the third National Climate Assessment back in 2014. A recent study from Harvard University projects that by 2071, nearly half of the 204 freshwater basins in the United States may not be able to meet their monthly water demand. This is due in part to growing populations, but also because of the effects of a changing climate system. According to this study, in 50 years, many US regions may see their water supplies reduced by a third, even in the face of increasing demand. If true, this will pose serious challenges to the nation's food system, infrastructure, and public health. We could argue that's already happening right now. What can be done to change our trajectory, not only to meet the water infrastructure challenges we face at home, but also those in the rest of the world? We can do more than just manage our progress down this path. We can create our own path and lead the way. To get there, we will need to invest more in scientific discovery and advanced water systems and innovative infrastructure. That's why all of you are here. While AI, digital tech, and other rapidly emerging tools are at various stages of development and deployment, they represent the future of our water systems. We will need to use what we learn to inform durable policies that support these systems and include physical and political resilience. And we will need to deploy advanced technologies that are both scalable and accessible. The pace of scientific research, analysis, and innovation in university labs and the vast academic scientific enterprise is stronger today than ever. So much so, I'd argue that universities, both public and private, are the most wildly underutilized intellectual assets in modern history. They represent vast reserves of science and technological capital whose potential has barely been tapped by decision makers at all levels of government and across industry sectors. However, there are some cities and counties who are leaning into their local and state-based science communities. Accessing the most currently available data and research, they can differently understand changing ecosystems, allowing them to design and execute infrastructure systems and responses with appropriate policy frameworks to support them that avoid, mitigate, and adapt to these changes, potentially turning negative impacts into net benefits. Let's take Sonoma County, for example. Located in wine country, upper Northern California, Sonoma Water, a municipal water utility owned and managed by Sonoma County, has a simple mission: to effectively manage the water resources in our care for the benefit of people and the environment through resource and environmental stewardship, technical innovation, and responsible fiscal management. Like most mission statements, this sounds terrific and appropriate for a public utility managing the most important asset in the region, water. The Sonoma County Board of Supervisors and the staff treat their water like the precious commodity that it is. Over time, they have come to rely primarily on the academic science enterprise to help them understand the shifting dynamics of water and how those shifts pose opportunities and threats to the infrastructure, conveyance, and quality of the water itself. In a place where water supplies are both the cornerstone of the local and regional economies and increasingly fragile, Sonoma Water has embraced the leading edge of water science. Most recently, this has led them to understanding and leveraging the data and knowledge that atmospheric rivers provide.
Imagine a river in the sky.
Perfect.
With more than twice the water of the Amazon.
Third time.
It's called an atmospheric river. Atmospheric rivers are long, narrow bands of concentrated water vapor that produce major amounts of rainfall. Atmospheric rivers begin in the warm waters of the Pacific, where water evaporates into the air. When this humid air meets a Pacific storm, the water vapor is concentrated and driven toward the coast, becoming a fire hose of rainfall and wind. Once the atmospheric river reaches the coastal mountains and the inland Sierra, the collision squeezes additional rain and snow from the system. Atmospheric rivers are responsible for up to half of California's annual precipitation. Scientists at Scripps Institution of Oceanography have developed a new system that rates atmospheric rivers on a scale from 1 to 5. The rating system helps identify atmospheric rivers that are beneficial, such as those that replenish reservoirs, and ones that produce hazards like flooding. Understanding atmospheric rivers is key to improving weather forecasts for better managing water resources and predicting flood risk.
So again, I want to credit Scripps Institute at the University of California, San Diego for that video and the work that they're doing on atmospheric rivers. A couple of years ago, as Sonoma County began to focus on atmospheric rivers and better understand how they can help predict and therefore manage impacts from rainfall, drought, and flooding, the county and water agency engineers teamed up with a cohort of academic scientists from Sonoma State University, UC San Diego, and Colorado State University. NOAA is also a partner on this project, which further enhances the value by linking federal investment and science. Together, they worked to develop the Advanced Quantitative Precipitation Information System that will ultimately serve all 9 counties in Northern California, beginning with San Francisco, to vastly increase their abilities to anticipate and track rainfall and flooding in real time to mitigate risks and impacts and pursue potential benefits resulting in more deeply understood rainfall patterns and surges. Okay, so just to set the table for the next piece, since I didn't realize that y'all couldn't hear it, essentially the focus of this next video is really the result of what Sonoma County and Sonoma Water did together as a result of understanding atmospheric rivers and the data and analysis that they could contribute to these decision makers to better manage both rainfall, flooding, and also drought periods. And this is an effort that was not only from Sonoma County, but also UC San Diego, the Scripps Institute, Sonoma State, and Colorado State University, along with NOAA. So take a look here, and then we'll keep going.
Hi there, I'm Shirley Zane. I'm a director on the Sonoma County Water Agency Board, and we're here out in the middle of Colorado, about an hour from Denver, at a site that has developed the most state-of-the-art radar. We want to know when those atmospheric rivers hit so we can prepare our communities for floods. So we're taking this state-of-the-art X-band radar and we're bringing it back to California to protect the people who live there.
So AQPI is all about improving precipitation monitoring and forecasting in the San Francisco Bay Area, the whole 9-county region, where we're going to put new radars and some surface sites out in the Bay Area. There's going to be a total of 5 radar systems.
The type of radars that will be deployed, as I understand, is one C-band radar that is to look long range into the ocean, and then a network of X-band radars in the Bay Area, essentially to measure rainfall.
And then that information comes back to Boulder, where we're building the whole, what we call the AQPI system. So when we take the radar data together with the models themselves, we're going to get a better prediction of when and where flooding is going to occur. Instead of getting a forecast update every 6 hours, we want to get it every hour, maybe even less than that. We want to fill in gaps where the National Weather Service radar systems currently are either blocked or they just don't have a good view of what's happening over the urban environment.
I'm very, very excited about this project because this new technology will bring very accurate rainfall measurements. Not only that, it will produce rainfall measurements at very high space-time resolution accuracy so that these can be fed into models to all sorts of applications to make decisions.
It's all about providing water managers and emergency managers and others the information that they need to deal with flooding, potential flooding impacts, and for water supply management as well. And our goal is to develop spin-off things like applications for your phone that can say, stay away from Route 101 between these two areas because we expect flooding in the next hour. So we see benefits here for transportation and other sectors of the economy as well.
The AQPI is a terrific example of leveraging scientific discovery and forward-looking decision-making to innovate around fundamental and complicated problems. I've only got one more video that I'll play. I hope if there's a lag to the sound or anything, at least you can see and hopefully match it all up. These are some of the struggles of doing this remotely and not being able to see you all. So I appreciate everybody's patience with me. In Sonoma County, evidence-informed decision-making is not only responsive to the risks that atmospheric rivers pose, but also aims to harness the benefits that they can provide by better planning for predicted surges in rainfall and extended droughts. This is just one example of many where engineers, technologists, and scientists from academia and government paired with decision makers work to use science as their foundational guide to address critical issues. Changing weather and water patterns in Northern California threaten to overwhelm infrastructure systems and pose near existential risks to human and economic health in the near and the long term. We need only to look at the current news cycle highlighting this season's firestorms and the newly identified gigafires in California for reference. Instead of merely reacting to these threats, Sonoma Water partnered with this wide community in an effort to get ahead of the curve, managing the impacts of a changing world, and as a result are not only better off than they would otherwise be, but also better off than they were. So let me take now a minute to share some background about the National Council for Science and the Environment. This is the organization I work with. We're a DC-based 501c3 nonprofit. Our mission is to improve the scientific basis of environmental decision-making. We were established in 1990, just over 30 years ago. And the community that we work with is vast. We are inclusive, we are nonpartisan in our work. As you can see here, not a technical graphic, but an important one. We really do engage across the science enterprise, not only with academia, although higher education is our core, kind of first tier in our community, but also with multilateral institutions around the world, with industry leaders ranging from Tesla to Wells Fargo, and very specifically with federal agencies. We have longstanding relationships with DOE, NOAA, NASA, USDA, and so on. And we work together to accelerate the use and access of science to inform durable, resilient environmental decision-making at all levels of government. Every year, and it might be the thing, if you haven't heard of NCSC before or very often, most everyone knows about our annual conference. This January, it'll be the first time that we're all virtual, as many are. We have partnered with Project Drawdown, and the theme of the conference is Research to Action, the science and solutions to respond to a planet under pressure. Water and infrastructure will be primary areas of focus during the conference. Similar to this summit, it'll be a series of 5 days with a combination of recorded, pre-recorded, and live presentations by scientists from not only the United States, but all over the world. Given the increased interest in science collaboration to solve today's complex global environmental challenges, the runway for innovation is long and inviting. Case in point, at the global level is the framework of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. NCSE works closely in partnership with the United Nations, most especially the UN Environment Program. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are a collection of 17 interlinked goals designed to be a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable. Hold on one second. Okay, I'm getting tips from everyone on how to make this video better, so bear with me. The SDGs are a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. Set in 2015 by the UN General Assembly and intended to be achieved by the year 2030, the SDGs are part of what was embedded in a UN resolution called the 2030 Agenda, and the targets in the SDGs are all set to be achieved by 2030. The SDGs serve as a universal guiding framework for the future, looking at the spectrum of global challenges ranging from poverty and education to air and infrastructure. Widely recognized by people around the world working in a diversity of sectors, the SDGs are global in context. However, the targets embedded in each of the 17 goals require evidence-informed local action. When it comes down to it, the local to global dynamic is an ongoing loop, presenting challenges and opportunities that prompt science-informed policy responses and solutions with innovators and leaders to ensure the world's ecosystems and its most vulnerable populations survive and ideally thrive. SDG 6 covers drinking water, and you can see this here on the slide, sanitation and hygiene, wastewater and water quality, water use and scarcity, integrated resources management, and water-related ecosystems. While substantial progress has been made in increasing access to clean drinking water and sanitation, billions of people, mostly in rural areas, still lack these basic services, including in the United States, most especially Indian country. Today, more than a third of the world's population does not have access to safe drinking water, and 2 out of every 5 people do not have access to a basic hand-washing facility with soap and water. Water scarcity affects more than 40% of the global population and is projected to rise. Over 1.7 billion people are currently living in river basins where water use exceeds recharge. More than 80% of wastewater resulting from human activities is discharged into rivers or seas without any pollution removal. Approximately 70% of all water extracted from rivers, lakes, and aquifers is used for irrigation. So what can we do? How do we keep the staggering realities that I've just iterated from paralyzing progress? I want to share this next video. It's brief. It's a story of hope and the application of technology that solves an all too common problem on the ground, not only in Nigeria, but in many places around the world. And I think it's important to share this because it also helps us remember, and you remember as the innovators, how important your discoveries and innovations are, particularly when they can be scaled, when they're accessible, when they're replicable. Peter, can you see it and hear it?
saboda shi ba za ka kula da su mai ya yi tsada da meye ba babu kawai in ya rana ya fita kawai za ka yi amfani da kayanka.
Saina offers an example of the power of one and helps us imagine what's possible when innovative technologies, again, are replicable, scalable, and accessible. This is where collaboration, investment, political will, the human spirit, and just a bit of luck sprinkled on come in. Unlike climate change and other more controversial issues, water is widely recognized as a fundamental basic need, essential to all life as we know it. To avoid water wars and the cascading negative effects and threat multipliers that come with long-term scarcity, devastating floods, or both, it is precisely people like you, with partners like the DOE, national labs, universities, and industry who can lead us towards meeting local infrastructure needs while also working to solve water challenges at the global level. This sounds grand and maybe even unattainable. However, you're doing it now, and you can see by the example that we just saw in Nigeria with Saina, things can scale in both directions and across all ways. Yesterday and today, you will have heard some of the leading water infrastructure innovations, and you'll wrap up the summit today with an eye towards what's possible and what's necessary to achieve a water future that is secure, stable, and accessible for everyone. Thomas Edison famously said, "Genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration." Humble thanks for your attention today and for your patience with me and my tech issues. And most of all, thank you for your inspiration, perspiration, and especially your genius. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Michelle. At this point, we have an opportunity to ask Michelle Wyman questions from the audience. And so if you have questions, please go ahead and put them into the Zoom chat off to the right or below. We have a first question for you. You mentioned that universities are underutilized. I was wondering if you can elaborate on like what else they can be doing so that they're more utilized.
You know, it's an interesting way to think about that, the way that you just asked the question. I think that the university science enterprise, and a number of you on the line right now may be from universities, are eager, interested, and honestly hungry to be more engaged. I think we need to together cultivate a different level of value and investment in facilitating the connections between the decision-making community and the academic science enterprise without having that be prompted by crises. Normally we see university scientists step in immediately when a hurricane hits or a wildfire is underway. I think what we're trying to do at NCSC is to facilitate long-term trusted relationships and purposeful opportunities for engagement between, again, local universities and local decision makers as a starting point to create those ongoing opportunities where science can actually be in service to innovation and accelerated decision making that's more durable and more forward-looking, not just happening, you know, in the frame of crisis management. This takes time, it takes effort, and it's certainly, again, something that we are working on regularly at NCSC. Our core community is our 2-year and 4-year universities, colleges, and community colleges. And we work very closely with local, state, and federal government colleagues, but really trying to create long-standing relationships and connections between the decision-making community and the science enterprise is the focus of our work. So if you all have suggestions, interest, appetite, please reach out to me. And depending on where you are, we probably already have something that's in slow, early simmer stage. And we'll see a lot of that emerging over the coming years, particularly starting with this conference. It's the last thing I'll say about this. We're really working hard to bring the action part of our mission to life. In other words, to actually making those connections and facilitating long-term relationships in science exchanges between decision makers and universities.
Let me see. Do we have any more questions in chat that anyone would like to ask? I know I have a few myself, but I don't want to hog all the time that we have. I was curious while we're waiting for questions to come in through the chat, if you might be able to speak as to like workforce development in the context of what you had just spoken about.
Yeah, absolutely. We have been putting together in partnership. I'm kind of giggling because Sonoma County, they're such a forward-looking small local government with incredibly profound ambition. We've been working together with them on a local government program here domestically called Applied Solutions that engages cities and counties and connects them to local universities, public and private, and community colleges. The AQPI example was a really solid example of how we're a part of that. Specifically, however, we have initiated something called the Applied Solutions Science Corps, which is an early fellowship program for high achieving college students and graduate students to place them in externships for immersion experiences in local governments to help them work on some of the current challenges that they face where science can really be a primary service to helping them solve and better manage the way that they're dealing with those problems locally. So again, that's called the Applied Solutions Science Corps. I know there are a number of other programs in the country that do similar engagement opportunities, but I think we also need to see an increased national value for these engagement opportunities. And again, when I say that universities are wildly underutilized intellectual science assets, I think there is a lot more appetite by the scientific community and universities than the decision-making community really realizes. During the early weeks of the pandemic back in late March and April, the number of phone calls we were fielding at NCSC from university colleagues, epidemiologists, to name a few, really jumping up and down, eagerly waiting for decision makers, people in the community to contact them. It was profound. And looking for opportunities where going beyond the press, you could actually deliver a cohort of scientists who really understand the local context of a challenge and the local risks that that challenge poses. That opportunity is huge. so we're focused on that. We're a small shop, so we very much look for partnership and invite that, and welcome any ideas or opportunities for collaboration in helping to accelerate that. It's really one of the biggest lessons that has come out of the pandemic for us.
Thank you. I believe we have another question. So the Nigeria video illustrated a trend we also saw in telecoms with this Africa leapfrogging large centralized infrastructure and going directly to modular distributed systems. Do you see other examples of distributed water generation and supply? You mentioned atmospheric water generators used in Appalachia. Any other examples?
Oh gosh, you know, honestly, I think that those of you, I would almost put that question back to all of you as a challenge and an invitation to think about how we could, and Diana, maybe we think about this even within DOE, how we can begin to collect these kinds of knowledge repositories where you can go and immediately look for examples, understand the currency of those examples, when they've been executed, where they are on the ground, lessons learned, who's leading them, what the capital cost was, how they were financed. Obviously, the context for a domestic example in Appalachia, that was actually the reference that I made to the water system in Appalachia was funded by the Appalachian Regional Council. And then, of course, the example in Nigeria was completely different. And it was funded through a combination of World Bank money, Nigerian investment from the country itself, and then on the ground scientists who were a cohort from a number of different international NGOs. And I think, you know, one of the reasons that I shared that is I'll say it again, you heard me say this in my remarks, we at NCSC, a lot of what we think about when we choose examples to highlight are if they are replicable, scalable, and also accessible. So the technologies are accessible technologies, even if they're not, you know, the highest functioning version of the discovery, they can still help satisfy the needs serving that particular place in that context.
Thank you.
Since you spoke directly to me, I'm just going to respond.
Oh, yeah.
So I think one interesting aspect, you know, sort of one thing embedded in the question from Peter is, are there opportunities to almost take advantage of folks that, and take advantage is the wrong expression, but you know, we have other areas that maybe don't already have existing water infrastructure, and so therefore they're starting from scratch to build their infrastructure. And are there ways to learn for us from them? And so this distributed infrastructure, modular distributed infrastructure is an example, but there might also be other examples. That was, yeah, and I think that probably DOE would be interested in engaging on those sorts of questions.
Agreed. And I think, Diana, and this is fun, isn't it, for all of you? It's the new way of engaging together. It's so different than being together in a room. I really appreciate everyone being on the screen. You know, again, I think this is a perfect opportunity where the university sector would be so responsive to an invitation to share what they know based on their local place about technologies already being practiced, being applied, what's worked, what hasn't, and also, of course, what it's cost to get it done, what the policy sets are required to support those technologies. You know, I think we really should think about that as one outcome in the context of this summit and how to scale innovation.
Let me see. So I think we have time enough for maybe just one or two more questions. And I see that we got a rather long one in the chat window. So I'm going to go ahead and read it, and maybe we can see if we might be able to answer that one. I am in Florida and we are facing water supply challenges. The city I work in is looking at an integrated approach to water management. Alternative water supplies are being investigated in our region, but they really just seek a sole source without multiple benefits. The NOAA technology for tracking flooding really spoke to me. Are there any green infrastructure projects happening now due to this? What type of funding is out there for funding technology and possibly funding options or partnerships for large scale green infrastructure projects?
You know, let me take a part of that question. As far as the types of funding available, I don't want to put federal colleagues on the spot, but I would almost kind of look to our federal colleagues, not as the only funding source, but certainly as a strong anchor to put together a strong portfolio of funding that includes also, I think, financing as a strong option. As far as green infrastructure, you know, I don't know where they are right now in Sonoma. I will tell you that their, you know, just to kind of share this story a little bit, their relationship to atmospheric rivers and the understanding of what atmospheric rivers represented to their abilities to differently think about water management in their part of the state started several years earlier. And they have been, you know, as they've continued to deepen their knowledge of the science of atmospheric rivers, it's almost as if it's been a vortex. I think if they were on the line with me, they would describe it like this, bringing in additional partners, both scientific partners and also funding partners, and increasingly investors that are seeing this as an opportunity to play around with different additional technologies that can help scale some of the positive sides. Once you understand that atmospheric rivers are occurring, how can you then manage water flows? How can you anticipate and then use rainfall as a net positive? And this entire piece, the reason I wanted to highlight it for all of you all, really started with one person down at Scripps who'd been sitting in his lab studying this, and he happened to be good friends with somebody up in Sonoma. And I think as great as that is, that's precisely what we need to shine a light on. And I think, Peter, you put this in the chat. I don't know that I would agree calling it the ivory tower pathology, but let's say that we definitely need to break down some of the walls that over the nation's history, and I would say it's not limited to the United States, kind of the walls that have erected between the university science enterprise and the communities where those universities are located. And those barriers are so strong. I don't think that the underutilization is because people don't want to learn and people don't want to understand or know how to make use of the research and analysis that's happening on campuses and in labs. I think it's because they don't know how to engage and how to make those approaches. And I do think that there's a third party, and I say this not only about NCSE, I think it'll take way more than a village. I think there needs to be one societal value for science across the board, particularly the use of science to inform durable decision-making in service to the environment, in service to public health, in service to the economy. I also think that there needs to be an appetite that we, those of us in the shared space that we have between us all, the value for science, the value for innovation, we need to push that value. It can't be a passive undertaking. We actually, right now, and Erica Goldman is on the line with me. She's our deputy director. She and I have been holding a series of science dialogues where we bring together decision makers with university scientists. And we help them understand and build a relationship around tricky issues that we're all dealing with: water scarcity, extreme weather events, infrastructure, readiness, and understanding that policy language is not science language, but it doesn't mean that they can't talk to each other. So there's a lot of work to do. But again, Peter, respectfully, I would say the pathology is not necessarily an ivory tower limitation. It's a limitation that we need to solve together as society. We need to just open up and create safe spaces to ask questions of any kind. Take into account, I'm not a scientist and I run a science society, right?
Cool. Thank you so much for your talk, and thank you so much for asking the questions from the audience, Michelle. I learned a lot, and I have a lot more to learn after this talk too, and definitely to engage more with policymakers as well. With that, I'm gonna throw it over to Diana Bauer, our Master of Ceremonies, to determine where we're going next, which I think might be a break.
Yes, thanks Ian. Thanks very much, Michelle. Thanks, Peter. And thanks to all of you for the conversation in the chat. I think the conversation about kind of breaking down the silos among our different our different organizations, our different roles, I think is important.